Those familiar with fandom culture of the early 2010s will likely know the name AnimatedJames. The man behind it is responsible for some of the most popular crossover animations on YouTube, and has an online history spanning a solid decade across multiple websites. However, in 2018 he fell off the face of the earth, and by most accounts hasn't been online since. That leads me to ask the question, what happened to AnimatedJames? Today, I'll provide the answers. James's first venture online began in 2008 when he created his first account on Newgrounds. He published a series of animations called Chaos High, which placed Sonic the Hedgehog characters in high school.
That whole summer away from you sounds like torture.
Yeah, I could've used another 3 months.
Being just 14 years old at the time, the young artist showed a lot of promise, creating fully animated and voice-acted shorts. While it would be a few years before he was able to build any meaningful online presence, his work immediately garnered some serious attention. On July 17th, 2011, his cartoons were re-uploaded by a third party to YouTube. Its first episode would go on to accumulate over 7 million views, with the others receiving 1 million apiece. Be it coincidence, or realizing the missed opportunity, that same year, James finally created a channel to officially upload animations, called Mega James Studios. To debut, he posted a handful of new animations starring himself. These would center around comedic and relatable anecdotes from school. Alongside him was an amateur voice actor named Cubics Fails, who also played himself. In the 2-year absence, James had developed a cleaner, Butch Hartman-esque animation style. Getting noticed even contained an original track he sang and produced, showing just how versatile his skill set had become.
I've tried everything, I'm even trying to sing. It's not like I can just transform into a king. I mean, if I could, I definitely would. Something tells me I should take you for a ride, so I...
These improvements were really what made his content so impressive. He was essentially a one-man production team, and in spite of adopting these responsibilities, James was able to release content faster than most other creators. On October 8th, 2011, he uploaded another Sonic parody, this time satirizing the plot of Generations. The animation was front-paged on Newgrounds, quickly receiving over 100,000 views. But that success was nothing compared to its growth on YouTube, where it accumulated nearly 4 million. Parodies quickly revealed themselves to be his greatest returns, consistently garnering him massive amounts of attention. So, he played to the crowd. During the spring of 2012, James would upload 3 more animations satirizing film and video game plots. Each of them was front-paged on Newgrounds, and even performed well with YouTube's algorithm. But he wasn't satisfied. While his channel had attained millions of views, very few had actually subscribed to his channel. By July of 2012, he had yet to break even 5,000 subscribers. James needed a series so popular that it would attract a dedicated audience, and soon enough, he would find it, because what was created next would change him from being just another animator to being one of the most popular in the entire fandom. James had grown up as a Sonic fan, that much is clear, but around that time, he also became fixated on another property. On October 10th of 2010, the 4th generation of My Little Pony received a television show called Friendship is Magic. It was a surprise hit amongst older audiences. Before long, the entire internet was inundated with its fanbase, who called themselves bronies. James was no different, and after being introduced to the show, began creating fanfictions of MLP. On July 4th, 2012, AnimatedJames uploaded a 3-minute animation titled Sonic vs. Rainbow Dash. Its premise was simple: have the 2 titular characters interact in a comedic manner. Within 60 days, the video accumulated over 1.6 million views. It became apparent that he'd struck gold, as by October, his channel hit the 10,000 subscriber milestone. James quickly went to work on producing another video crossing over the 2 franchises. That December, he uploaded A Way Past 20% Cooler Christmas, in which Sonic and Rainbow Dash celebrated the holiday festivities. This video also performed well, though its success was abruptly cut short when, for unknown reasons, James deleted his entire YouTube channel. While it's likely some explanation was given, it appears to have been lost to time. He seemed to have grown somewhat frustrated. When the animation was published on Newgrounds, he wrote a lengthy rant complaining that it wouldn't play on their site. I understand this isn't working. I have no idea why. There's no reason for it not to be working. I hate when things don't do what they're supposed to do. But yeah, I'm officially done with Newgrounds. I took a break from Newgrounds because I noticed how well Sonic vs. Rainbow Dash did on YouTube compared to how it did on Newgrounds, and I decided to give it one more try. But after this little what the fuck moment, I am done with Newgrounds. I'm going to DeviantArt. On that DeviantArt page, we can find references to a few lost videos, such as one where he talks to Slenderman, but there is no real indication of why he deleted his channel. I did find a somewhat insensitive drawing James made in which he speaks to the ghost of Ed Gould, who had passed away just months prior after a long battle with cancer. I don't know why he would draw this. Its description actually provides no explanation further than that he was inspired by the movie Paranorman, so make of that what you will. What is known is that this didn't spell the end of his YouTube endeavors. Just 1 month after releasing the Christmas special, he decided to start from scratch. January of 2013 marked the creation of a new YouTube channel, this time rebranding himself as AnimatedJames. This is the moniker he would ultimately become most well known for.
Well, that's boring. That's slightly less boring.
The earliest animations on this channel are actually direct re-uploads. Looking at their view counts today, it seems that fact did little to hinder their success. Sonic Generations Plot and A Way Past 20% Cooler Christmas accumulated an impressive 3 and 6 million views respectively. In the meantime, James continued working on a project much closer to his heart. On his previous account, he'd teased a series he was developing called Seniors. Having turned 18 that year, he was either graduating or had already graduated high school at the time. Because of this, James felt inspired to capture his senior year friend group in the form of an animation. On February 3rd, 2013, he published the full 11-minute pilot. Titled Seniors, Cancer Crusaders, the episode centers around his cast brainstorming ideas for charity. It was his longest animation to date, which is nothing to scoff at given how tedious production can be. It wasn't perfect, but for an 18-year-old's testament to his 12th grade experience, it exceeded expectations.
Question. Might I ask why they're calling upon a high school to make the commercial as opposed to, I don't know, an actual production company?
They believe that high school students have the intelligence and creativity to create something truly astonishing.
No, seriously, why?
We were the best they could afford.
It's clear the audience shared similar sentiments, as the pilots went on to receive over 2 million views. Seniors would quietly be shelved after this, though its spirit would live on in James's later work. Instead, he focused on revitalizing what had initially put him on the map. Those who followed James from his previous channel noticed that he'd neglected to re-upload the original Sonic vs. Rainbow Dash animation. This was very strategic, needing it to build momentum for the release of Cancer Crusaders. Just hours after the pilot went live, the crossover animation finally returned to YouTube. But that wasn't the only reason he waited. 6 days later, James uploaded a new installment to the series, pitting Tails against Twilight Sparkle. This 4-minute animation would cement the crossovers as a staple on his channel, with its return being subject to intense fanfare. The first has since gone on to accrue 70 million views. Its sequel received 25, and in light of the major success, James doubled down on parody content, filling out his channel with My Little Pony and Sonic animations. In between them were shorts about other franchises. Nearly all of these cracked at least 1 million, with an average of over 10 million apiece. Though Seniors was cancelled, James held on to the premise of a show set in high school. Whilst releasing parodies, he began developing a new pilot, one that would much more easily translate to new episodes. Instead of bringing back real-life classmates, he enlisted the help of Cubics Falls, as well as another voice actress named Awkward Marina to play leads. James would not play himself, but a self-insert named August, possibly a reference to the month he was born. He eventually settled on the title of Sea Students, releasing the pilot on April 14th, 2014. Its runtime was nearly 2 times that of Seniors, clocking in at just under 20 minutes, which is a lot for an independent animation. The episode ends with an elaborate music sequence arranged by James himself.
I mean, sure, you proceeded to throw me out the window, but I really felt our connection as I fell to the ground and broke my arm.
Kevin, are you still chasing after Scarlet? You two have been broken up since the middle of junior year.
Trust me, August, she's just playing hard to get.
No, you're playing hard to get rid of.
Look, at some point, she's gonna give in and admit her true feelings for me.
Once again, it was a very impressive feat as an indie project, even more so than his last effort. With very clean artwork, well-executed visual gags, and a simplified cast, many fans became invested in where the series would go. Luckily for them, James promised that he'd already started on episode 2. By the end of 2014, James was on track to reach 250,000 subscribers. While the original content didn't perform quite as well as the parodies, they made up for it in reception. They strengthened his fanbase and community. It was apparent by this point that James was a rising star in web animation. His cartoons were not only improving, but he also had the work ethic to make a career sustainable. Few animators could put out content as consistently as him, and as a result, his name became very well known across several different fandoms.
Thank you all so much for the support for C Students. I'm blown away at the positive feedback I got from it, and even the fair criticism.
In 2014, James was invited to host a panel at a brony convention called TrotCon. This was to be his first public speaking event ever. Despite some awkward moments and dead air, for the most part, it went surprisingly well. It was an all-around pleasant experience, being able to meet fans and other content creators he'd been interacting with online.
Are you Animated James?
Yeah, but
I am such a huge fan. Can I get a picture with you?
yeah, listen, I'm kind of in a hurry for something, so I don't really have time for...
But I...
Okay, look, dude, I'm sorry. I really gotta go. I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry.
However, the good times would end abruptly after an incident that soured the entire experience. James had previously collaborated with a voice actress named Vanna Mellon to produce a pony version of an Eminem song. They planned to film a whole music video for the track at TrotCon, where James would appear cross-dressing in a pink wig and hat. However, during filming, one of the actors was instructed to lightly hit James as a joke. The actor severely miscalculated their strength and punched him so hard that James began bleeding. He was quickly transported to the hospital, where a procedure had to be done involving stitches. The video was subsequently canceled, as he ranted about the ordeal in an update video. However, he still viewed the overall experience fondly, and so, when approached to host panels at 3 separate conventions the next year, he agreed. Unfortunately, these later trips would reveal themselves to be far less rewarding. In the summer of 2015, James attended BronyCon, where he made appearances at several different panels. The first was a group discussion about animation, which took place on August 7th. It went pretty smoothly. The next day, James found himself waiting in line for another guest lecture. There, he was approached by a fan with a simple request: to deface him with a permanent marker. Not thinking much of the con shenanigans, he agreed. But midway through the scribbling, James was interrupted by an onlooker who began chastising him for health concerns. The clip was immediately uploaded to YouTube under the title AnimatedJames Chewed Out by SJW. Given that calling poison control for a Sharpie is pretty ridiculous, people were on his side, but James still felt the need to defend himself, writing, "I get extremely angry when I'm blamed and scolded for something that's not my fault. It's a good thing I've never gotten accused by the police or anything, otherwise you'd never see me again. Either way, feel free to call me crazy and overreacting if you want. Whatever makes you feel superior." Placed in an uncomfortable position, the incident led James to be very on edge. This alone was not enough to ruin the event, but may have caused him to be antagonistic towards other attendees. On the 9th, James was a guest on a live version of Bronies React. In response to the audience chanting the slogan, "Just do it," he shouted at them to shut the fuck up. The next day, he finally held his solo panel. Unlike the show from a year before, James was far more prepared. He brought a slideshow of original drawings to supplement his punchlines. But midway through the panel, James began making off-color jokes about the other guests. He recalled attending a different panel the day before and heckling them for being unfunny.
To leave a panel hosted by someone who I consider to be a close friend. So what I do is I yell out, "We're not friends anymore," and then I walk out.
During this convention, James had also visited the Artist's Alley, where he approached the booth of an acquaintance named Leakfish. He then pulled out his camera to film himself riffing their artwork, making a joke about sexual assault before pretending to steal a print. The footage was edited into a sketch, which he played during the panel. Word quickly spread around, eventually reaching the people he discussed. They were less than thrilled. On August 11th, Leakfish wrote a call-out post about James. She'd revealed that he'd made similar comments at previous conventions, to the point that he was explicitly scolded to stop joking about assaulting her. He tried his best to defend himself, replying, "I'm sorry for how the joke made you feel, but at the same time, it's just a joke. A lot of people found the joke funny. Calm down." Leakfish responded to this by pointing out that those same audience members went to her booth afterwards to repeat the jokes, counting over 50. Now at the center of a Twitter mob, James quickly uploaded a video apologizing to the artist, though this too was not enough to satiate them. Instead, more began to speak out against James, including the panelists he'd called unfunny. His final response to the controversy was uploaded on August 22nd, nearly 2 weeks later. It was titled, "The Truth About the Brony Fandom." In the video, James expresses his frustrations with the Brony community as a whole, believing that their motto of love and tolerance had been left behind. He describes his experience at a panel, during which 2 supposed comedians were brought on, but were totally unfunny and got little to no reaction from the audience. During the Q&A segment, James decided to ask why they agreed to do the stand-up if they sucked at it, which made the mood of the entire room even more awkward. After this, rumors supposedly spread around the convention, where he was accused of being an obnoxious heckler. Once the con organizers found out, he was subsequently banned from even speaking at the later open mic events. He concludes by saying that bronies overall are oversensitive, not open to criticism, and ultimately an echo chamber.
We're just like every other fandom in existence. We're not special. I'd like for us to be special, but the fact is we're not.
Following this, James would be somewhat ostracized by the community. He still made appearances at later BronyCons, but was deemed a problematic creator, and his mental health unfortunately took a steep decline after these events, something made apparent by the subsequent update videos. To those who only followed James through YouTube, this seemed to be the sole catalyst for the animator's downward spiral, but in reality, there had been several coinciding events in the months prior that were far more catastrophic. If anything, it was simply the straw that broke the camel's back. Up until this point, I've intentionally ignored the elephant in the room, the stain on James's catalog that soiled his reputation forever. But if you have courtesy knowledge about who he is, you likely already know where this is going.
Uh-oh. Stinky!
On May 10th, 2014, an anonymous user on 4chan's Comics and Cartoons board posted a Tumblr blog simply called Sonic Girls. It was a rather disgusting webcomic depicting the series' characters farting on each other for pleasure. Observe this masterpiece, in which Rogue takes a massive dump into a bush.
Poop!
Clearly, the author put a lot of time and effort into making their intent known here. Now, while the artist identified himself as Andy Sonic, a few Anons were quick to point out how remarkably similar it was to AnimatedJames' art style. Interestingly, one decided to message James over Tumblr asking him if it was him. He denied it, but suspiciously, the blog immediately disappeared. Yo, so me and some of my friends confronted AnimatedJames about the website, sonicgirls.tumblr.com. He denied it, despite it looking exactly like the website, and then he left the conversation, then deleted the whole site. Nice job. Totally got them off your scent there, James. And in case there was any doubt, James wrote a vague post the next day alluding to the blog being exposed. Sigh. I'll be honest with all of you. Something happened last night that A, is the last thing I ever want to happen in my life, and B, made me realize I'll never be fully happy ever. It's not something I can reveal unless it's brought up, but just know that all the energy I put into wanting to kill myself, I'm putting into finishing projects faster with more effort. At this point, I have no choice but to do that. In 2 years, this will all escape my mind and won't even matter to me. The revelation spread like wildfire. It was quickly pointed out that many of the characters he'd drawn were canonically underage.
How old is Amy Rose again? Oh, that's right, 12 years old. How old is Blaze the cat again? Oh yeah, 14 years old. Oh, and how old is Cream the rabbit? 6 fucking years old. You are drawing minors engaging in adult-oriented situations, and you're distributing them publicly to strangers on the internet. You repulsive motherfucker.
While everyone was distracted with Sonic Girls, many neglected what was perhaps the most disgusting artwork of all. In an art piece Andy Sonic posted to DeviantArt titled Best Friends, he wrote the following. Part of the reason I have a fart fetish is because of my best friend Heather. We met in the 9th grade and we're still friends. One day while we were hanging out, I was lying next to her butt. And what happened was, well, pretty much the picture here. And it wasn't just a small fart. It was a long, and very wet fart that smelled horribly, and it was great. We both laughed. She laughed more than me, but it was that fart that gave me my very strange fetish. Like I said, we're still friends, and she still farts on me as a joke, because she never laughed harder in her life than when she farted in my face. Oh, no.
Stinky.
If this is to be believed, James drew fart fetish pornography of a real-life friend based on an interaction they had together. And it wouldn't be the first time either. In December of 2012, he drew himself with a girl he met online drinking as a bar. He notes in the description, "I also drew an unrated pic that's slightly more graphic and obscene than this, but she'd probably be really mad at me if I uploaded that." This whole ordeal culminated in a thread being created about him on Kiwi Farms. There, they also began to scrutinize his online relationship.
Speaking of love, I'd like to promote my girlfriend Michaela's DeviantArt. She's an incredibly talented artist who made me the greatest piece of fan art I've ever seen. We started out as friends who just goof around on Skype until we realized that if we didn't live miles away from each other, we would totally date each other. And after realizing how short life is, and realizing how happy I am when I talk to her, and how much I miss her when I'm not talking to her, I decided to just say YOLO and start dating her through the internet.
The 22-year-old was dating an artist named Michaela Groves, who went online by the name Toxic Soul 77. The issue is that at the time, she was purported to be 16 years old. Between an embarrassing fetish that was now publicized everywhere he went, to accusations of grooming a minor, James began to isolate himself from the internet. This only worsened upon receiving a call on Skype from Psychic Pebbles, also known as Zach Hadley. When James picked up, Zach and his friends began making fart noises before asking if it turned him on. He was so upset by this that he published a piece to DeviantArt, claiming he'd developed trust issues. He wrote in its description, "In a nutshell, one day Psychic Pebbles and a bunch of his friends called me on Skype for the sole reason of mocking and ridiculing me like a bunch of 6th graders. This pretty much destroyed my self-esteem for a while. And even though they didn't mean any harm, what they said and how they acted was still really inconsiderate and immature, and I seriously can never speak to them again without getting angry. I keep having flashbacks to that experience, and it always makes me feel like a freak. And that experience is the reason why I always assume the worst of people. I always assume the person I'm talking to is a complete dick, until proven otherwise. Hence this drawing." James slowly lost motivation to complete any of his long-term projects. He formally canceled the second episode of Sea Students, uploading everything that had been completed on April 20th of 2015. A few weeks later, he had a mock therapy session with a brony named Dr. Wolf. There, he vented about frustrations regarding his personal identity.
And for the longest time, I thought I was creative, original, and played by my own rules, but looking back, I realized I only got famous because I made something based on 2 already established franchises. And before that, all I ever did was try to replicate what I see on TV or in movies. This being back when I was 13 and 14.
From this interview, you can easily gather that James had become very self-conscious, resulting in a complete questioning of his identity. Following the previously outlined backlash at BronyCon 2015, his dirty laundry was given an even larger spotlight. Take, for example, this callout, where one user states, "This guy's also a pedo and a fart fetishist. Look it up." People began to seriously question the themes present in James's animations, despite his popularity stemming from children's properties. For example, Sea Students Episode 2. Despite being scrapped, the completed footage depicted one student whacking off on camera before being caught. This was recurrent throughout the pilot as well, with several depictions of intercourse. On August 17th, James posted an animation titled Splatoon vs. D-Blob. It depicts the latter, once again, getting off onto the Inklings, in a satirically erotic fashion. Many were quick to point out that these characters resemble children, which was not a good look for someone being accused of sexualizing minors. At one point, James attempted to embrace his degeneracy, creating an alt account on his DeviantArt titled Weirdo Animated James, and its description leaves little ambiguity as to its intention. "Hi, I'm Animated James. Welcome to my fetish DeviantArt page. Some of you might know me from YouTube. If you stumbled on this DeviantArt account, then you also know I'm an eproctophiliac. If you're not into farts, well, first off, how did you manage to find this page? And second, the art on this page is not for you, and you'll probably enjoy my normal art better. If you are, have fun! I know I am." In place of Sea Students, he created 2 new webcomics. The first was on the main channel and called Middle Ground. The second was an all-female series called Haley Flower, which was uploaded to the Weirdo account. As you can guess, it's pretty gross shit. Now, although James posted to the DeviantArt page quite frequently, it was short-lived. He quickly found himself in more controversy after drawing explicit art of the character Steven Universe. In November, James posted a My Little Pony animation titled Main 6 Cartoons. Shortly after, he followed it with an audio log titled Depressing Ass Update. There, he revealed it would be his last before leaving the fandom.
I don't really have that connection to the Brony fandom that I used to anymore, so any pony-related thing that I make isn't going to be something I enjoy making. In fact, the truth is, I barely enjoy making anything anymore due to depression. Depression that I actually thought was over. Like, I figured, I have a good life, I don't have school, I don't have a boss, so why be miserable? I've tried animating and making videos despite not really feeling like it. I even did live streams to distract myself from how sad I was. But eventually it just became too much. I'm depressed because I have social anxiety. And I have social anxiety because I care too much about what people think of me. And considering there are thousands of people who are constantly judging me, including you, I have a hard time getting my mind off of it. I'm insecure, and I don't want to be that way for the entirety of my 20s, so I've decided to seek help, either from a therapist or a psychologist. I might be foolish in thinking that a stranger can help me feel better about myself as opposed to close friends, but none of my friends really understand what I'm going through, and if I want to get back into actively wanting to make content, I don't really have any other choice.
On January 2nd, 2016, James announced that he and Michaela had broken up, before expressing his desire to leave the internet forever. He tweeted, "To those who enjoy calling me a pedo, me and Michaela are no longer together. I really am sorry for depressing everyone. I'll try to make you smile before I leave the internet." That final project would be an anthem, an original song he created about his problems as an artist, and his need to be alone. It would also be the last animation to star the characters from C Students, which had been slightly redesigned to appear older. Released on February 11th, 2016, that video was called Creative Types. The video shows a self-insert suffering from the abuse of trolls, before being comforted by his loving, red-haired girlfriend. I personally think it's an allegory to his real-life relationship, but that's for you to decide.
It's wrong, and I knew it all along. I just thought it would be nice to not have to pay the price. You are someone I adore. What do you think I'm alive for? But you're an individual. You have your own schedule.
James had intended to leave the internet following its release, but it received an extremely warm welcome, so much so that even his detractors gave credit where it was due. The animation was very polished, the song was sweet, and there was a clear sentimentalism present throughout it all. Even Chris Chan liked the music video. In response, he posted a twitlonger discussing how much he appreciated the support. First of all, I'm very happy, not for just the exposure it's been getting, but how well it seems to connect with people. It means a lot to me for a few reasons, but this is the biggest one. I used to be a way bigger douchebag than I currently am, and in realizing how much of a jackass I've been, after months of self-loathing, I decided to turn over a new leaf. However, James couldn't help but use it to also levy allegations against a former roommate who he'd housed free of charge for the past year. I let a friend who was going through a rough time live with me free of charge, and I'm even helping develop another friend's animated pilot. I was starting to feel good about myself for becoming a more selfless person, but as it turned out, the friend I let stay with me was ungrateful, judgmental, and unwilling to take responsibility for his own life. He ended up taking out all his anger at me over something that wasn't even a big deal, and even called me a fraud for making creative types, saying I only made it to make people feel sorry for me. And as someone who just got out of a self-loathing existential crisis, being told that I haven't changed and I'm still a selfish asshole made me question whether or not he was right. Regardless, James appeared to be developing a healthier relationship with his status as an internet personality. He began posting about how he finally felt happy, and even attended another brony convention. In the comments of the aforementioned therapy session with Dr. Wolf, He left a new comment, this time reflecting on how toxic his mentality had been. Since taking part in this, I've learned, grown, matured, and experienced a lot of seriously dark, but mentally fruitful things that led me to reevaluating a lot of what I thought was true and what I thought mattered, including some of the stuff I said in this video. Thanks to professional help and good, patient friends, I was able to gain self-awareness of what was really wrong with me and actively do something about it. I seriously hope that anyone who's in the middle of any sort of mental breakdown or any kind of psychological edge gets that same kind of help. I just wanted to address the stuff I said in this video that I now disagree with. It was a confusing time and my mind wasn't where it was, which is a good thing because it wasn't anywhere good back then. Although I know I made content people liked back then, mental health comes before that. James uploaded several more animations throughout 2017, including a Rick and Morty fan animation and one he did based off a stand-up routine. Both received over 1 million views each. He'd once again regained motivation to pursue his more ambitious projects, starting a new webcomic called Off Saving the World. It showed him attempting to draw outside his comfort zone, with a much better foundation for an overarching plot. Everything appeared to be going well for James. His channel was far from dying, and he had a pet project to suffice. Most of his fans were now aware of his degeneracy and willing to look past it. So, you can only imagine their shock when on July 16th, 2018, James suddenly changed his channel's name to state it was being discontinued, before uploading a whole new video explaining the decision.
It has nothing to do with that and everything to do with me and the fact that my focus and personality have shifted away from the focus and personality of this channel, which is good because the personality I had while I was on this channel was not a personality that deserved to exist.
The last we would ever hear from James would come on his Twitter account, whose bio was changed to read, "An account I had back when I was a different, less happy, more insecure person who didn't want to exist anyway. May he rest in peace." And ever since then, James has been gone. He's disappeared from the internet and hasn't been undeniably seen since 2018. Many fans have wondered where exactly the animator has gone. It's understandable he'd want to abandon such an account given how much public baggage it had. But with how efficient and dedicated he was to his craft, it seems almost implausible he'd lose the drive to create and release altogether. And given how optimistic he was at the time, the sudden change of attitude feels bizarre, to say the least. In recent years, there's been very little discussion of James, but one interesting development came from the voice actress of Penny, the female protagonist of Sea Students. On August 19th, 2019, Awkward Marina posted a statement where she addressed many of the questions people asked her ever since the disappearance of James. It's prefaced with, "Might delete later because cancel culture-y stuff kinda goes against my personal morals, but this is why I left Sea Students." The document reads, in part, "The material itself was highly sexually explicit, which I didn't realize going into it. Most of my followers at the time were young children, so I didn't feel okay with being part of a show like this." James and I had many Skype conversations, both audio and message, where he kept trying to get me to date him or come meet him. But I was still 17 and in high school. I just felt very confused and maybe used. He even said he would get on a plane and meet me wherever I am, and said he didn't want me meeting anyone special in college because he wanted to be that someone. The events seemed to have led to the cancellation of Sea Students, which, bear in mind, was before James and Michaela stopped talking. Given this information only came to light a year after James left, is it possible there are unscrupulous behaviors not yet public that the artist could be hiding from as well? To be honest, I don't know. There's no clear answer to this. James left it intentionally ambiguous. In the years since his farewell, there's been many theories regarding James and his return. Many suspects have arisen that people claim must be James under a different alias. I'd like to preface this by saying it's just speculation, but I believe this to be the most plausible. In late 2019, a viral tweet noted that if pitched up, the vocals on Green Day's 21 Guns sounded similar to Phineas from Phineas and Ferb. Because of this, several memes were created based on the comparison. One such example was an animation titled Phineas Sings 21 Guns. Although the style at first glance does not resemble James's animations, there are shared elements, namely the way they draw hands and backgrounds. This is present in other animations too. None of the animations look particularly similar to each other, almost as if the artist is attempting to disguise their natural art style. The first video on the channel, a Game Grumps animation, adopts a more anime-looking style, but shows Neurotic's ability to transition between others fluently. Given how traumatized James had been from not disguising his art style enough on his degenerate blogs, specifically focusing on this skill would make sense. One counter-argument could be that Neurotic portrays himself as a white man, except for the fact that James did this as well when disguising himself as Andy Sonic. Neurotic makes the exact same types of animation James used to make. There's a Sonic parody, memes, even animated music videos for fandoms. I get none of this sounds particularly unique, so bear with me. I think the most damning piece of evidence from all of this is the fact that Neurotic himself quit YouTube. Neurotic was not a very active content creator. His account was created on August 22nd, 2018, 1 month after James's departure. Yet, when he decided to leave, he didn't speak as if he'd just joined. In fact, he spoke as if he'd been around for much, much longer. This is going to be more than just a break. I can't ignore how poisoned content creation has become for me. If I stay, that poison is just going to leak into what I post. I thought I could overcome what I've experienced since I started, but I just don't fit in. Sorry for even trying to. Dated February 3rd, 2020, following this there would be no other activity from any of his accounts. It's not quite clear what triggered it, though a glance through his timeline showed he'd been arguing with voice actor Little Karibo about semantics. If you believe this is someone else, self-exile seems a bit extreme, but if it's James, it would make a lot of sense.
I'll help you reach your prime. I'll make sure you can find me when I'm done with my alone time.
I've been Turkey Tom, thanks for watching, and until next time, leave me alone.